The sky split open the day they arrived. I was on post near Alaska's northern radar belt, sipping cold coffee and thinking about how much I hated the smell of seal oil. Then the proximity alerts screamed. Not a glitch, not a drill, real contact. We all knew the Zephyrians existed. Hell, their conquests were broadcast across black channels like horror shows. 164 systems burned, bent, or broken. No survivors. Their ships didn't just kill. They erased, like whole civilizations never existed. But they made one mistake. They thought Earth was next. By the time Command sent out a continent-wide alert, half the U.S. military infrastructure had been jammed. Satellites turned into dead rocks. Communications vanished into static. But we weren't like the other planets they'd steamrolled. We weren't peaceful. We weren't united either, but we knew how to fight, and we were damn good at it. I saw the first enemy ship before the feed died. It looked like a cathedral dipped in obsidian. Cold, perfect, massive. Hundreds more hovered behind it, blacking out the stars like a plague swarm. They didn't demand surrender. They didn't speak. They just opened fire. Washington, Moscow, Beijing, gone in under 30 seconds. But they missed something. Earth wasn't a collection of pretty cities or polished capitals. Earth was rage. Earth was history soaked in blood, trenches, and fire. We didn't evolve to bow. We evolved to survive. And survival means war. The Zephyrians never saw it coming. They couldn't understand guerrilla tactics. They couldn't anticipate that humans fight like cornered animals, that we'll tear out throats with our teeth if we have to. The first counterstrike wasn't pretty. An old nuclear missile silo, long forgotten, rusted, technically decommissioned, launched 3 warheads into low orbit. The Zephyrians didn't even bother dodging. Why would they? Primitive toys. But when those warheads exploded, they weren't carrying nukes. They carried nanite-coated EMP lace, Russian tech, hacked and rebuilt by a lunatic ex-military engineer named Randall, somewhere in Siberia. Untraceable, experimental, and, according to his files, designed to kill a goddamn star cruiser. It did. The cathedral ship froze mid-air, lights dying. Then it fell. We all watched it burn through the atmosphere and slam into the Rockies. The shockwave shattered windows across 4 states. But I didn't blink. None of us did. That was the moment we knew. We could kill them. And once humans know they can kill you, it's already over. The next 72 hours were chaos. Entire militias rose from the underground. Old war veterans returned to battle. Men who'd been abandoned, betrayed, forgotten, now leading city-states into combat with whatever weapons they had. We didn't coordinate with satellites. We didn't need to. We used flares, runners, Morse code on iron rails. And underground, in what was left of NORAD, I watched a man named Commander Harland organize the most terrifying revenge campaign the world has ever seen. Harland wasn't polished. He didn't believe in peace talks. He'd buried 3 sons in the Gulf Wars, and now he wanted blood. "They took our skies," he growled, staring at a cracked hologram. "Fine. We'll take their ships, from the inside." So we did. Our first boarding party wasn't trained astronauts. It was convicts. Lifers, strapped with oxygen tanks and magnetic boots, promised full pardons if they succeeded. 2 ships boarded. Only 1 crew returned. But what they brought back... It changed everything. Zephyrian navigation codes. They thought they were superior. They thought we were primitive. But we had something they didn't. Desperation. By day 10, we were hijacking their tech, reverse engineering their weapons, screaming through the void in ships painted with the flags of Earth's dead nations. No more stealth. No more hiding, just vengeance, flame, and fury. Every time we took down a Zephyrian destroyer, we left behind only one thing, a crude Earth-made signal pulsing in binary. "You lost. "Keep coming." By the third week, they stopped jamming us because they were too busy dying. They thought we were done after the first week. The Zephyrians believed Earth's counterattack was a fluke, random luck from an inferior species clawing against its inevitable extinction. That was their fatal flaw. They didn't understand that when humans bleed, we don't stop fighting. We evolve. They had numbers, sure, but they weren't prepared for what Earth had become. Not just a planet, not just a race. A war machine powered by grief, loss, and centuries of killing each other with cold efficiency. By the 12th day, every major city was either glassed or turned into a fortress. Power grids were gone, food supply chains fractured, governments either annihilated or hiding in bunkers. But out in the ruins, people adapted faster than any algorithm could predict. I saw it with my own eyes. A band of survivors out of Nevada rigged together Zephyrian plasma coils with car batteries and mounted them on broken-down trucks. They called themselves the Burners. I watched them take down a Scout-class skimmer by driving full speed into its propulsion field and detonating half a gallon of diesel-soaked nails underneath it. The alien craft tumbled, spiraled, and crashed in the Mojave Sands. 6 burners died in the process. Didn't matter. 10 more replaced them the next morning. You can't win against people like that. Down in the bowels of what remained of NORAD, Commander Harland paced like a rabid animal. The man had sleep in his eyes and fury in his bones. His voice was gravel, his hands always twitching near the hilt of his knife. He didn't trust anyone who hadn't lost someone in the first wave. He trusted me. I don't know why. Maybe because I didn't try to impress him. Maybe because I didn't smile. Maybe because I had nothing left to lose. "You know what I hate most about them?" Harland asked, standing over a shattered hollow map of North America. "It ain't the weapons. It's that smug silence. No propaganda, no demands, no speeches. They think we're beneath even their insults." I stayed quiet. He wasn't asking for a response. He didn't need one. "We got our hands on one of their commanders," he said, his lips curling with something between disgust and satisfaction. "Took 4 hours to break the encryption on its helmet. Turns out they use emotional dampening. Kill the need to feel fear, guilt, empathy, or pain. That explained a lot. They think that makes them stronger," he continued, lighting a cigarette with a shaking hand. "But I've seen what rage can do, what vengeance makes a man capable of. I'd take a furious human over a calm alien any day." He took a long drag, staring at nothing. Then he looked at me. "I'm going to send you to Canada." I blinked. "Why?" "Because that's where they're building something," he said. "We intercepted pulses coming from deep in the Laurentian Mountains. Not a standard comms signal. Some kind of quantum lattice. Might be a gate, might be a breeding ground, might be something worse." He paused, then handed me a folder. "You're not going alone. The squad they gave me was the kind of mess you only find when the world ends. 5 men, all killers in their own right. There was Reyes, ex-cartel enforcer turned freedom fighter, eyes dead, hands always twitching. Then Cross, a survivalist from Minnesota who could disappear in a forest without leaving footprints, said more with grunts than actual words. Nikolai, a Russian ex-Spetsnaz with a permanent limp and a laugh that could make your skin crawl. Tomlin, youngest of us, only 19. Fast, angry, too much adrenaline, not enough sense. Claimed he'd watched his parents get dissected on a Zephyrian research ship and escaped by biting through a guard's throat. And then there was me. I didn't have a name anymore. The Zephyrians burned that out of me when they torched my home and turned my wife into vapor. Now I was just a weapon, and I was ready to be used. The insertion into Canadian territory was done at night. No engines, no tech, just gliders and dead silence. We landed 30 clicks outside Montreal's ruins and made the rest of the way on foot. The cold bit into our skin, and the snow made it hard to track without giving ourselves away, but we moved like shadows. For 3 days, we saw nothing. No Zephyrian patrols, no ships, no signals. Too quiet. Then we reached the base of the mountains. It was a crater now, except it wasn't natural. The snow had been burned away in a perfect circle. In the center stood something that didn't belong on Earth, twisting obsidian towers rising like black vines, pulsing with violet light, humming like a living thing. They were building something. And it was almost done. Tomlin lifted his scope and swore. There's at least 24 of those freaks, plus drones, plus that thing in the center. We all saw it, a structure shaped like a claw clutching a sphere. Whatever it was, it made your bones ache just looking at it. They're making a planetary stabilizer, Nikolai muttered. I've seen the blueprints in Moscow before we lost contact. That claw, it latches to the planet's core, sucks it dry, turns the whole crust into fuel. Reyes spat in the snow. Bastards ain't here to conquer. They're here to strip us like scrap metal. I nodded. Then we make sure they choke on it. The plan was suicide. But that's how you win wars like this. We waited until midnight. The cold was unbearable. Our breath froze on our lashes. But rage kept us warm. We split into pairs. Reyes and Cross moved left. Tomlin and Nikolai circled to the right. I went straight up the gut. They had shields, drones, energy barriers. We had knives, old explosives, and nothing left to live for. The first explosion came from the west. Cross took down a tower by ramming a rigged snowmobile full of ammonium nitrate right into its base. Fire bloomed in the dark like a sunrise from hell. The Zephyrians turned, confused, not panicked, just processing. That was their mistake. Tomlin popped out from the other side, spraying rounds into the drones. Whatever weapons he'd scavenged from the alien wreckage, it worked. Half of them dropped, sparking and twitching like fried insects. I moved through the chaos, one grenade in my vest, a combat knife in my hand. Got close to one of them. He turned, raised a plasma rifle. I didn't give him the chance. I drove the blade under his chin and watched his black blood steam in the snow. We kept moving, killing, shouting over the chaos. One by one, the towers fell, until only the claw remained. Then it opened. I can't explain what came out of it. Not a soldier, not a machine, something else. A creature made of light and bone and rage, 12 feet tall with no face, just a rippling field of gravity and teeth. We all stopped. Even the Zephyrians hesitated. The thing pulsed once, and Tomlin exploded, just gone. No time to scream, no body left. Reyes shouted and opened fire. Useless. Cross charged it with a blade. He lasted 3 seconds. I ran. Not because I was afraid. Because I had one job. The grenade. I made it to the base of the claw, tore open the hatch, and shoved the device into its core. The creature screamed behind me, a sound like every nightmare I ever had. I turned just in time to see it flying at me, gravity tearing up the snow, the trees, even pieces of me. Then the grenade went off. Not a normal explosion. It was a blackout wave, developed by rogue engineers, meant to shut down Zephyrian tech on a molecular level. The thing collapsed mid-air, bones snapping inward like paper. The claw followed. The towers turned to ash. The pulse stopped. I blacked out. When I came to, Nikolai was dragging me down the slope. "You still alive?" he said, grinning with a face full of blood. "I knew you too angry to die?" I looked back at the ruins. Just smoke now. Nothing alien left. No light, no hum. Just silence. Human silence. We buried Tomlin and Cross there. No prayers. Just dirt. They wouldn't have wanted anything else. 3 days later, Harland looked me in the eye and said 7 words that I'll never forget. "We're going to take the war to them." We didn't have time to grieve. The war had shifted. We weren't survivors anymore. We were predators. And predators don't mourn, they hunt. After the destruction of the Claw in Canada, Zephyrian fleet activity in orbit dropped by 73%. Not that we had satellites left to track it. We got that number from stolen comm logs ripped from the skulls of dead commanders. Reyes found a way to translate their symbols into raw frequency patterns. Harland called him a genius. Reyes called it revenge. They'd lost too much too fast. Earth was supposed to be their 165th victory, their clean sweep, the last unchecked box on their conquest map. Instead, they were bleeding, confused, sloppy. And that was when Harland made his move. The room was darker than usual that night. Makeshift war table, scattered maps, and hollow screens flickering with static. Harland stood at the front, hands buried in a crate full of alien tech, dragging out a curved device shaped like a rib cage with veins of blue light pulsing inside. "We got this from the wreckage up north," he said, dropping it onto the table. It let out a low hum, almost like a growl. "It's a jump core, short range, meant for skirmisher ships, barely larger than a cargo van." Nikolai leaned forward, wiping grease off his fingers. "Can it take us off-world?" Harland nodded. "Not far. Maybe 1 light year at best. But that's all we need." He tapped the table, and a map appeared, jittery, partial but real. One of the stolen comm logs had contained a partial star chart. We couldn't read most of it, but one sector stood out. Red Wound 9. Their term, not ours. "What's there?" I asked. Harland grinned. It wasn't a smile, it was a promise. "A supply moon, orbital dockyards, lightly defended, too small to be a threat. Too critical to lose." He looked at me. "You're leading the raid." We called it Black Lance, 5 men, 1 stolen jump drive, a hijacked Zephyrian scout vessel painted black with spray cans and broken bone ash. It smelled like rust, ozone, and blood. No ceremony, no goodbyes, just the grind of metal under our boots and the creaking of alien tech under human fingers. Reyes was with me again, this time manning the core systems. Nikolai took weapons. Cross, God bless that silent bastard, handled comms, and they gave me a new guy, Mercer, British, Special Forces, eyes too clear for someone still alive. We jumped at 0300. I don't know what I expected on the other side. But it sure as hell wasn't that. The second we emerged from the jump, alarms wailed. Reyes cursed, slamming fists into the console. "They tracked our entry vector!" A Zephyrian patrol frigate hovered in front of us, sleek and silent, weapons spinning. "No talking," I barked. "No stalling. Kill it." Nikolai grinned like a man offered a drink after a decade of drought. He fired. The beam weapon we'd jacked from the cathedral ship shrieked with burning light, carving through the enemy like butter. 1 strike, clean, efficient. The patrol ship split into 2 burning halves, drifting through space like roadkill. "Guess that's our hello," Mercer muttered. Ahead of us floated Red Wound 9, a massive gray moon split by mining scars, with spindly metal structures rising like veins around its equator. Dockyards, shipyards, storage towers. It wasn't pretty. It was utilitarian, cold, and exposed. Exactly what we needed. We rode in fast and quiet. The first part of the plan went smooth. Too smooth. We docked on the underbelly of a maintenance shaft, something they never expected intruders to use. Reyes burned through the hull with an arc torch, and we slipped inside. It smelled like antiseptic and oil, no sign of life. The Zephyrian engineers were smaller than their warriors. Tall, yes, but narrow-framed. More fragile. They didn't fight. They didn't even scream. We killed 6 before anyone even knew we were inside. I felt it again, that edge, that cold numbness behind the eyes. You stop seeing them as aliens. You start seeing targets. You don't hesitate. If you do, you die. We reached the central data chamber by hour 2. Reyes and Mercer split off to plant virus nodes into the control core. Cross held the door. Nikolai and I set charges on the power grid. Then something went wrong. Always does. Cross radioed a single word. Movement. And then the comms went dead. We regrouped fast. Mercer was bleeding from his shoulder, eyes wild. There's a warden unit down the corridor. Big, fast, not like the others. I moved. We found Cross folded in half. Literally. Spine snapped, throat torn. Behind him, stomping through the black-lit corridor, came the Zephyrian warden. 9 feet tall. Not elegant like the others. Heavy. Industrial. Like a war golem stitched from hate and metal. Its face was a black mirror, its arms humming with plasma blades. We didn't hesitate. Nikolai went left, Mercer right. I charged down the center, tossing a sonic disruptor. It bounced once and detonated, flooding the corridor with a scream too high for human ears. But Zephyrians weren't deaf. The warden staggered. Mercer took his shot. A plasma bolt to the side, burned clean through its armor, but it kept coming. Nikolai dove low, stabbing it with a fused monoblade he'd welded himself. It didn't pierce, just sparked. I jumped, landed on its back, and shoved a thermal mine between its shoulder blades. Burn in hell! It exploded. The hallway collapsed around us in fire and noise. We limped out 20 minutes later, data cores in hand, blood on our boots. We'd lost Cross, but we'd gained something more valuable. Knowledge. The Zephyrians were panicking. Their moon was compromised, their network corrupted, their fleet fractured, and buried deep inside their control logs. We found a transmission. From something beyond their empire. A warning. Not to attack Earth. Not because of danger, but because of corruption potential. I read it over and over again. Corruption? Mercer looked pale. They think we're contagious. Nikolai laughed. We are. We infect with chaos. That's what they fear. Reyes added, they fear our ability to adapt, not just survive, but twist their systems into weapons, to fight dirtier than their logic allows. They didn't fear us because we were strong. They feared us because we were human. We returned to Earth 30 hours later. Our jump ship barely made it past low orbit before breaking apart. We crash-landed near the old Colorado front. Harland met us there. We handed him the cores, the blueprints, the signal logs, everything. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he turned to me. You're going to lead Phase 2. I didn't ask what Phase 2 was. I already knew. Phase 2 was war. Not defense, not survival, invasion. We stopped calling it a war. Wars have rules, boundaries. A beginning and an end. This wasn't that. What we had now, what we were launching, was a reckoning. Harland called it Operation Ashfall. He said we were going to set fire to their sky. I stood on the edge of the Nevada scrapyards, watching the sun bleed over rusted metal carcasses of what used to be cars, drones, and broken tanks. The dust tasted like ash and ozone, and every time I blinked, I saw the warden again. Cross's spine bent backward, that mirror-faced monster stomping through steel like paper. That image was fuel. We were done waiting. Behind me, teams of scavengers and rogue engineers were welding alien tech to human steel. Makeshift dropships stitched together from Zephyrian plating and the bones of old warbirds. Our fleet wasn't elegant, and it sure as hell wasn't clean, but it worked. Function over form. Pain over polish. We didn't need to look good. We needed to hurt them. You're not flying blind. Harlan told me as we gathered in what used to be a casino basement turned operations center. The walls still had faded poker murals. Now, they were covered with maps, diagrams, Zephyrian language grids, and blood-stained objectives. He slammed a fist onto the table and rolled out a new star map. They've got a communications relay orbiting a dead world in the Ventari drift. Real small, unarmed. It's how they keep track of all fleet movements in our quadrant. You take it out, you sever their eyes. Mercer frowned. They'll come looking for it. Harlan smiled. Good. That's when we got them. We launched from a hidden silo in Montana, an old Cold War relic no one thought still existed. 3 ships, 1 decoy, 2 strike carriers, each barely spaceworthy. Each loaded with everything Earth could throw at them, not nukes. Those were outdated. This time we brought something worse. Humans trained in hand-to-hand zero-G boarding ops, carrying makeshift grav blades and compression bombs. We'd turned shipboarding into a sport, into a religion. And I was the high priest. We jumped into the drift at 0400 Earth time. Dead space, no stars, just a black dwarf sun surrounded by shattered moons and drifting debris. In the middle floated the Zephyrian relay, sleek, silver, pristine, an architectural middle finger to the chaos of the galaxy, like they thought beauty made them untouchable. I cracked my knuckles. We'd see how pretty it looked in flames. The first step was the decoy, Mercer's ship. He peeled off and blasted comms frequencies on every spectrum, mimicking a rogue distress signal. Standard protocol said the Zephyrians would ignore it until he attached a fake artifact pulse to it. They couldn't resist that. Zephyrian command treated artifact signals like sacred relics, forbidden, dangerous, irresistible. Within 15 minutes, 2 scout ships appeared. Slender, fast, all teeth and arrogance, right into our ambush. Nikolai fired the first shot. A tethered EMP mine latched onto their engines. Reyes followed up by overriding their drives using the code pulses we stole from Red Wound 9. Both ships died without a sound. Now the relay was exposed. We moved fast. Boarding that relay felt like entering a temple. Silent, cold. Designed by creatures who never had to hide, who never felt fear. The halls were smooth, curved. No signs of conflict, no place for cover. They weren't built for war. They didn't expect us to bring it. We found resistance on the 3rd level. 2 Zephyrian guards, tall, arm-bladed, their skin glowing with internal circuits. Reyes didn't wait. He sprinted forward, screaming a battle cry in Spanish, and drove his weapon into the closest one's throat. The other turned to respond, but Mercer grabbed it in a headlock and activated a grav compression device. The alien skull imploded. We didn't slow down. We reached the core by the 6-minute mark. Inside, we planted a payload wrapped in polymer shielding, not to destroy it, but to broadcast through it. Harlan wanted them to hear what we had to say. Reyes uploaded the file. A simple video. A montage of every ship we'd downed, every corpse we'd piled, every city they'd tried to erase, but failed. At the end of it, my face appeared on screen. I stared into their lens, blood on my jaw, and said just one sentence. This is the part where we come for you. Then we detonated the core. The explosion shattered the relay into glass and metal rain. The Zephyrian network went dark in the entire drift sector. We'd cut off a limb. Now we were going for the heart. The return trip wasn't smooth. We were tracked. 2 warships, bigger than anything we'd seen yet. Not scouts, not skirmishers. These were capital-class juggernauts. And they were angry. Mercer took the helm while Reyes rerouted power to shields. Nikolai manned the gun, snarling like a dog, muttering in Russian as he fired. We ducked through a debris field, weaving between frozen moons and shattered satellites. The ships followed. Silent, perfect, unrelenting. Then Reyes turned and said, "I've got a mad idea." He jacked into the relay virus, what was left of it, and triggered a feedback loop on a nearby mining rig. It had been abandoned for decades. Still had a core, though. Still had fuel. We lured them into its orbit, and we lit it up. The rig went nuclear, not from fission, but from collapsed fusion. A blue-white flash spread across the void, catching both ships mid-maneuver. One disintegrated. The other staggered, crippled. We boarded it. The interior was hell. Burning walls, collapsing halls, dead Zephyrians slumped over control panels. One still alive, crawling toward a console, its hand outstretched. I stepped on it, hard. It gurgled. I knelt beside it. "Where is your command home?" It didn't answer. I broke its fingers. "Where?" It spat a spray of silvery blood. Then it whispered a single word through shattered mandibles. "Syndrail." I stood. Mercer looked at me. "Never heard of it." Reyes did. He was pale. "That's their capital." We got out before the ship collapsed, escaped in an emergency pod, and drifted into Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. 3 men. 1 name. Syndrail. Back on Earth, Harland was waiting. So were the others. We played the recording. When they heard it, when they saw the way the Zephyrian muttered it like a death prayer, the whole room went quiet. Then Harland spoke. "Then that's where we go." He turned to me. "Build the team. You've got 1 week." I nodded, then added one more thing. "No more hit and run, no more sabotage." Harland frowned. "What then?" I looked him in the eye. "We're going to burn their goddamn empire to the ground." 7 days. That's how long we had to prepare for the most suicidal assault in human history. No fleet, no allies, just a handful of Earth's angriest, most unkillable bastards, a stolen star map, and a plan so reckless it barely qualified as strategy. We weren't diplomats. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were executioners. And the execution was set for Syndrail. Syndrail. Just saying the name made my jaw tighten. According to Reyes' decrypted intel, it wasn't just their capital. It was their origin world, birthplace of their ruling caste. A planet so deeply buried in technological arrogance, it hadn't seen war on its soil in over 3,000 Earth years. It was supposed to be untouchable. But that's the problem with things that grow too big to fail. Eventually, they fail hard. Harland cleared out an old nuclear bunker in the Appalachians to prep our assault. Only the living were allowed inside. Too many ghosts in the upper levels. Walls were scorched with old war graffiti, and blood still stained the stairwells from the first weeks after impact. It felt right. Our team was smaller now, leaner. Only the ones who'd bled enough to know what this mission meant. Me, Reyes, Nikolai, Mercer, and a new face. Boone. Boone was a throwback, a mountain-born psycho who'd spent the last year leading a militia in the Rockies that made cannibals look civilized. Thick beard, dead eyes, and a voice like a rock slide. He joined on one condition. I get to kill one with my bare hands. No one argued. We spent the first 3 days jamming Zephyrian frequencies, planting false beacons in every corner of the system, making it look like Earth was preparing for full-scale defense. Classic misdirection. Meanwhile, Reyes and Boone retrofitted the stolen jump drive from the drift relay into a smaller, faster pod. We didn't need a ship. We needed a spear, one that could go through their atmosphere, cut deep into the belly of the beast, and unleash hell from the inside. We weren't going in with guns blazing. We were going in like a virus. The pod launched at Oro 300 from an underwater silo off the Alaskan Trench. The pressure nearly killed us before we even reached space. But we'd felt worse. I've had ribs broken and lungs collapsed, and my skin torn off by Zypherian plasma shards. Pressure didn't scare me. Failure did. As we broke through the upper layers of atmosphere, I looked down at Earth, scarred, scorched, but alive. For the first time in a long time, I felt something crawl up my throat. Not fear. Not hate. Pride. The jump took 43 seconds. We didn't come out of it gently. We slammed into Syndrail's upper orbit, hidden inside a pocket of debris we'd tracked from a downed Zephyrian dreadnought 2 months ago. Reyes piloted the pod like a lunatic, skimming their satellite arrays and bypassing their scan sweeps by manually mimicking their transponder signatures. We burned through atmosphere fast and hard. Syndrail looked like a perfect machine from orbit, everything symmetrical. Black and chrome spires piercing clouds that looked more synthetic than natural. No wildlife, no ocean, just steel and silence. No beauty, just control. Exactly what we'd expect from a race that tried to rewrite nature into something clean. We hit ground inside their equatorial core ring, a megastructure the size of Manhattan wrapped around the planet's magnetic equator. It was their command hub, data bank, and military nerve center all in one, and we'd just crash-landed in its guts. The pod split open. Alarms blared across the corridor. Alien architecture gleamed under purple light, seamless and pristine. Nikolai coughed blood and dragged himself to his feet. Showtime? We didn't come for a firefight. We came for a kill. We moved through their corridors like rats in a cathedral, using old interference tech from the Black Lance Op to blind their surveillance systems. Reyes carried the virus core on his back, hooked into his spine. One overload pulse, uploaded to the right node, would cascade through the entire network. It wouldn't just fry their systems, it would expose everything. Ship codes, homeworld locations, weak points, command hierarchies, civilian clusters, vulnerable infrastructures. With one upload, we'd give Earth the blueprints to finish this war. Permanently. We reached the heart of the core ring in just under 90 minutes. No resistance, which was worse than a firefight, because that meant they knew, and they were waiting. Boone spotted the ambush first. Zephyrian commanders, 4 of them, stepped from the shadows, adorned in obsidian exo-armor, their limbs shifting into razor-sharp weaponry. One of them was at least 8 feet tall, with a crown of metal spines rising from its skull like an alien war god. They didn't speak. They attacked. Boone roared and charged before anyone else could move. He tackled the nearest commander with enough force to break steel, slamming it into the wall and headbutting it until his own skull split open. I turned to engage the largest one, knife drawn, blade wrapped in grav pulse fiber. I didn't wait for it to strike. I leapt. We collided mid-air, its blade missing my chest by inches. I drove my knife into the joint of its neckplate and twisted. It screeched, a sound like bone being sawed underwater, and flung me across the corridor. Nikolai fired an explosive round from his wrist-mounted launcher. The blast caved in 2 ribs of the 3rd commander, but it didn't drop. It lunged, blade out. Mercer intercepted it with a grav shield. The impact broke his arm, but it bought enough time for Reyes to shove the virus core into the node behind us. The system howled. A deep, bass-pitched frequency filled the chamber as the virus began to eat. I got back to my feet and threw myself at the crown-headed commander. My knife was gone, so I used my fists. I didn't care that it outweighed me by 200 pounds and had armor stronger than tank plating, because I wasn't fighting for Earth anymore. I was fighting for Cross, for Tomlin, for every child turned to ash in Washington, for every name forgotten in the dirt. I broke 2 fingers punching that thing in the jaw. Then I grabbed its head, wrapped my legs around its neck, and snapped it sideways. It fell. Hard. Boone was bleeding from 3 places, but still standing. Mercer's arm was mangled. Reyes had scorch marks up and down his back. Only Nikolai looked untouched. "We done?" he asked. The lights dimmed. Then every console in the room lit up red. The virus had done its job. Everything the Zephyrians ever tried to hide was now ours. We fought our way out. Not quiet, not surgical. Brutal. Boone ripped the arm off one of their soldiers and beat 3 others to death with it. Mercer shot out every wall panel to trigger emergency decompression. Reyes collapsed a stairwell with a repurposed thermal grenade. And I set fire to their sacred archives. I stood in that chamber, walls of shimmering data, histories they'd erased, names they'd stolen from conquered worlds, and I poured fuel from my suit's backup line, lit it with a plasma spark, and watched it burn. The fire didn't just scorch. It screamed. We escaped through the power tunnels, reconnected with a stolen skimmer, and broke through the upper atmosphere in seconds. By the time they realized what we'd done, we were already halfway to the jump ring. Back to Earth. But not as invaders, as executioners. Back on the ground, Harland met us with silence. We handed him the drive. He looked at me. I didn't speak. He nodded. Now we end this. The moment the drive was plugged in, everything changed. It didn't look like much. A scorched black chip no bigger than my thumbnail, still slick with Reyes's blood. But the second we linked it to Earth's fragmented grid, it lit up every screen from Colorado to Crimea. Zephyrian systems cracked wide open. Their command web, their supply routes, their tactical doctrine, their homeworld structure. Every disgusting secret they ever buried, we now had in our hands. And for the first time since they came, the question wasn't, can we survive? It was, how do we make them suffer? Harland locked himself inside the bunker for 2 straight days, working with Reyes and the last of the old world tacticians to map out the final strike. I watched him on the monitors. No sleep, no food, just coffee, radiation pills, and a thirst for vengeance so sharp it could cut steel. When he finally emerged, he looked 20 pounds lighter. But his eyes? Those hadn't aged a second. "New plan," he said. "Forget defense. Forget sabotage. We're not playing their game anymore." He slammed a finger on the table. "We're going to wipe the Zephyrian species off the galactic map." No one said a word. He looked at me. "You're going to lead the Armageddon wing." I won't lie to you. The name sounded ridiculous. But what it stood for? Unfiltered industrialized extinction. The Armageddon wing wasn't a squad. It was a blueprint for planetary erasure, built off stolen Zephyrian tech, paired with human ingenuity and our willingness to ignore every rule of war. We weren't launching fleets. We were launching hell. We spent 5 days building it, an unholy fusion of nuclear fusion cores, gravitic destabilizers, biological weapons coded to Zephyrian genetics, and plasma detonation charges stolen from Syndrael's own storage vaults. It would be deployed in stages. First, their outposts, cut off and isolated. Then, their shipyards, bleed the production lines. Finally, Syndrael, not just their capital anymore, a target. Boone, Reyes, Nikolai, Mercer, and I boarded the lead dread pod, Hammer 1. There were 5 others launching with us, each manned by ghosts in skin suits, soldiers with no names, no homes, no pasts, just one job: deliver the payload. First stop was a Zephyrian moon colony called Helrix. We didn't drop troops. We didn't even send a warning. We launched a kinetic rod the size of a city bus from orbit, pure tungsten, stripped of tech. Just mass and speed. It hit like God's fist. An entire command dome vaporized in a silent bloom of dust and death. No explosions, no screams, just sudden, irreversible oblivion. The message was simple. We're not here to conquer. We're here to erase. Next was Zelra Prime, a fortress world armed to the teeth. They had defenses, capital-class batteries, planetary shields. None of it mattered, because Nikolai found an old sewer system running under their fusion core, something they thought humans wouldn't understand. He laughed for a full 5 minutes before pressing the trigger. The core ruptured from the inside. The shield collapsed. The towers crumbled. Over 5 million Zephyrians died in a single planetary quake. Mercer said nothing the whole time. Just watched the flames and whispered, "For Earth." By the time we reached Volterra, they were begging for mercy. Actual broadcasts, translated Zephyrian distress signals, pleading for negotiation. They offered us technology, peace, even a sector of space to rule as our own. Boone spat on the comms screen. Did we offer that to Washington? Did we give Moscow a chance to negotiate? No one answered. He pulled the trigger. Volterra burned for 3 days. Then came the real fight. The Syndrail front. The last time we saw it, we snuck in through the back door. Now we were knocking through the front with sledgehammers and fire. They'd fortified since our last visit. Spires doubled, sky fortresses armored, orbital cannons layered like teeth around a skull. We didn't care. Reyes rerouted 4 orbital mirrors, originally meant to terraform distant moons, and turned them into laser reflectors. He focused the energy of 3 nearby stars into one pinpoint. We melted half their upper shield in less than an hour. Nikolai flew in under the burning wreckage and dropped grav bombs onto the dome cities. They didn't explode. They collapsed gravity itself, folded buildings like tinfoil, shattered bone like glass. We breached their command halls with heat so intense it vaporized language from the air. And then we got the transmission. From one of them. Zephyrian High Command, not a field soldier, not a puppet. A real voice, cold, precise, in perfect translated English. We surrender. Just that. Nothing more. Boone looked at me, knife in hand. They think this is a surrender war? I didn't blink. I walked to the terminal, leaned into the mic, and said, "We don't want surrender. We want extinction." Then we muted them. We planted the final core in the center of the Carinth Spire, Syndrail's oldest monument, a tower made of crystal and history. Took 4 hours of fighting just to get close. We lost 30 men in the tunnels. But I got there. I planted the core with Reyes bleeding beside me, shot in the lung but still cursing loud enough to make God flinch. And I armed it. It wasn't just a bomb. It was the end of their empire. When it blew, the tower cracked in half, igniting a planet-wide chain reaction through their energy grid. Cities shorted, reactors ruptured, their atmosphere bled radiation into the void. Their homeworld died. We didn't watch from space. We stood on the surface, breathing it in, alive. We left one message behind, broadcast on every frequency their race ever used. You wanted war? You got Earth. We returned home 3 weeks later. Boone disappeared into the mountains, said he'd done enough killing for a few lifetimes. Reyes recovered, half a lung short, but still smiling. Mercer didn't talk much. Just walked into the woods one day and never came back. Nikolai runs a militia now, teaches kids how to break bones and build bombs. And me? I sleep 3 hours a night. I still taste ash, still see Cross, still hear the screams. But I know one thing. It's over. They'll never come back. They can't. There's nothing left. We were humanity's monsters. We became the thing they feared most. And we proved, once and for all, you don't conquer Earth. You survive it, if you're lucky. You'd think the end would feel like something, like weight lifting off your chest, like sunlight cracking through storm clouds, like redemption. But it didn't. It felt like silence. Heavy, loaded, unnatural silence. The kind that hangs over a graveyard long after the mourners have left. We came home as ghosts, not heroes, not saviors, just men who'd lived long enough to finish the killing. The Earth we returned to wasn't the same one we left. The skies were clearer. No more ash drifting from orbital bombardments. The cities were starting to rebuild, patched together with steel, scrap, and stubborn willpower. Children ran through the dirt with sticks shaped like rifles, laughing like they hadn't grown up in the shadow of annihilation. But under all that, everyone was tired. Not weak, just tired in the way that never really goes away. Tired in the soul. You saw it in their eyes, heard it in their words, felt it in every quiet dinner, every unspoken question. How many did we have to become to survive this? I didn't go back to the bunkers, didn't check in with command. I disappeared into the edges of what used to be Wyoming, dragging a tent, a canteen, and a pack of smokes behind me. Set up near an old river, one of the few that didn't glow at night from radiation runoff. No one followed. Except Reyes. He found me 3 days later, limping from the busted leg he'd taken during the Carinth Tower collapse. He didn't knock, didn't call out. Just dropped into the dirt next to my fire and cracked open a can of beans like we were still behind enemy lines. We didn't talk for a long time. The fire snapped between us. The wind howled low and bitter. Somewhere far off, a drone buzzed, probably one of the new civilian recon scouts. Finally, Reyes broke the silence. "They're putting up statues." I didn't answer. He stirred the beans with a stick. "One of you, over the Colorado bunker, says he ended the war." I spit into the fire. "They're full of shit," he nodded. "Yeah, I told him to melt it down. Turn it into bullets." We both sat in silence again, but the weight between us wasn't empty. It was full of names. Cross, Tomlin, Boone, Mercer, all of them, carved into our bones now, too deep to scrape out. "You know what I dream about?" Reyes said, leaning back and looking at the stars. I didn't want to know, didn't matter. He told me anyway. Not the war, not the fights, not the blood. I dream about her. My daughter, standing on the porch before the sirens ever sounded, wearing that dumb purple dress with the glitter. He paused. Voice cracked. She looked at me and said, "Don't be late tonight." "Okay, Papa?" I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say. Grief wasn't loud for us. It was quiet. It was survival turned inward. It was fire with no oxygen left to burn. Harland called 2 weeks later. Didn't ask how I was. Didn't ask if I wanted another mission. He just said one thing. "They're coming." I stood up so fast my knees popped. "Who?" "Scavengers, opportunists, survivors from other races. The Zephyrian collapse created a power vacuum. Now everyone wants a piece of the ashes." "Not our problem." He paused. "Yes, it is, because they're heading for Earth. We'd thought it would end with Syndrail, but the thing about power? Someone always wants to take it. Zephyrians were monsters, but monsters kept the other beasts at bay. Now that they were gone, the galaxy remembered we were alone. And we'd just proven we were dangerous, so they came. Not in fleets, not yet. In scouts, in traders, in observers with quiet smiles and twitching hands, pretending peace, hiding hunger. The worst was a species called the Vithari, cold-blooded reptilian merchants who believed in debt over death. They sent diplomats wrapped in silk, offering treaties, trade routes, weapon patents, all smiles, all flattery, and underneath it, control, manipulation, ownership. Harland shut the door on them. So they sent something else. We lost a village in the Alps, gone. No bodies, no signs. Just a smear of melted snow and a faint energy signature. The message was clear. Comply or disappear. I found myself back in Colorado without even thinking. Old boots, old rifle, old fire in my gut. Reyes joined. So did Nikolai, missing 3 fingers but grinning like the maniac he always was. They didn't ask for pay. They didn't ask for recognition. They just said one thing. "What's the plan?" Harland briefed us in the ruins of what used to be Denver's financial district. Half the skyscrapers still leaned like broken teeth, but the command center was underground, humming with stolen Zephyrian tech and patched-up human systems. "We're not fighting a war anymore," he said. "We're defending a legacy." He turned to me. "Armageddon Wing isn't decommissioned. It's evolving." I frowned. "Into what?" Harland didn't blink. "Into a warning." We launched our first op under a new banner, Project Black Soil. Not destruction, deterrence. We targeted Vithari installations across 2 systems, didn't kill, just crippled, wiped their data cores, burned their debt vaults, left their ships floating dead in the void, their crew screaming into empty channels. Each time, we left the same message burned into their hulls. Earth is not for sale. Some called us war criminals, others called us saviors. We didn't care, because we knew the truth. There was no peace, only preparation, only posture. The price of survival was eternal violence wrapped in silence. I got letters from survivors now, kids who grew up in bunkers writing to say thank you. One of them asked what Earth was like before the Zephyrians. I tried to answer. Wrote and rewrote it 6 times. Finally just said, "Less cruel, but no less dangerous." I still dream about the war, but not the battles. I dream about the silence afterward, about the firelight on Reyes's face, the way Mercer's hands shook. The last look Boone gave me before he vanished into the woods. I wake up with their voices in my ears, not screams, laughter. That cruel, tired, broken laughter that only comes from men who've done the worst things and somehow lived to remember them. Reyes asked me once, "Do you think we're monsters now?" I answered without thinking. "No," then paused and said it again, slower. "But I don't think we're men either." "Because you can't be both. Not after what we did. Not after what we had to do." I buried Reyes on a cold October morning. No ceremony, no flag, no god, just me, a shovel, and the sound of wind cutting through pine. He died in his sleep. Heart stopped sometime after midnight. They said it was stress, scar tissue, shrapnel that never quite got removed. I knew better. He died because he finally let go. He'd been holding the war in his chest like a lungful of fire, and when the world quieted, he just stopped fighting. No one showed up at the grave. He wouldn't have wanted them to. He was a private man, a broken man, a dangerous man. But he was ours. I sat by that grave for 3 days, didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't talk, just listened to nothing, to the emptiness he left behind, to the wind, the trees, the birds returning to a planet that used to scream. And in that silence, I heard something I hadn't felt in years. Not peace, but a question. A low hum under the surface of my skin. Now what? The world didn't end when Reyes died. It kept turning. Slowly. Stubbornly. The bunkers became schools. The command centers became hospitals. The missile silos turned into greenhouses. Kids who used to draw battleships now drew stars. Harland stepped down, disappeared into the dust. Some said he took his own life. Others said he went off-world, chasing rumors of another threat out in the fringe systems. I never asked. Some men aren't meant to die in beds. Some men shouldn't. Nikolai took over Earth's outer defense grid. He wore a uniform now, pressed and polished with silver stripes and a badge that read, General. I visited him once. He was giving a speech to a group of new recruits, all barely out of their teens, eyes wide and empty. He saw me standing at the back and broke protocol on the spot. "That's the man who ended the war," he said, pointing. "Forget your books. You want to learn something? Sit down and shut up. Let him talk." I didn't want to, but I owed him. So I walked to the front of that broken concrete room and looked at their fresh faces. Soft hands. No scars, no ghosts in their eyes. And I said, "War's not about winning, it's about finishing. And when it's over, you don't celebrate, you survive. If you're lucky, you live long enough to regret it." They didn't clap. Good. There was a girl who used to bring me food in the hills. Her name was Lonnie, probably 20. Born in a bunker. Knew more about salvaging Zephyrian circuitry than most of the scientists who tried to reverse engineer it. She didn't flinch when she looked at me, didn't see a monster. She just saw a man. I told her to stay away, that I wasn't safe, that I couldn't promise anything human. She shrugged and said, "You already did what no one else could. That's more than human. That's enough." I didn't believe her. But I let her stay. Sometimes we'd sit on the edge of the ridge, watching the sun rise through the ruins of what used to be Cheyenne. She'd ask me about the war. I'd lie, told her we fought honorably, that it ended quickly, that we didn't burn their libraries or their cities or their children. She knew better. But she let me lie. Because sometimes men don't need the truth. They need a reason to keep breathing. The first alien ambassador arrived 6 months later. Not Zephyrian, some other race. Insectoid, small, armored in glistening plates. He landed on a patch of dead soil and offered us technology, resources, peace treaties. Said the galaxy had seen what Earth did to the Zephyrians. That they respected us, feared us, wanted to avoid conflict. I watched the broadcast from a cracked screen in my cabin. He called us the Flameborn. Said our kind were now guardians of balance. I laughed so hard I nearly passed out. Guardians? We were nothing but survivors with blood on our teeth. But we accepted the treaty, because this time we weren't desperate. We were ready. We had defenses carved from ruins, weapons stitched from stolen tech, a people tempered by fire. No one would ever enslave Earth again, not because of morality, but because of what we became to survive. Mercer came back one day, just walked into the old cabin like he hadn't vanished for 2 years. Hair longer, eyes colder, body thinner, but the same steel in his bones. He didn't say hello. He just sat on the porch next to me, stared at the sky, and said, "Is it over?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. They're calling it the Age of Ash. A time when Earth rose from cinders and showed the stars what fury looked like. There are textbooks now, history vids, hero documentaries full of actors with straight teeth and clean uniforms. They make movies about Cross, about Tomlin, about the burners and the dust front and the fall of Sindrail. They never get it right. Never will. Because you can't understand it unless you smelled it. Unless you stood in the smoke with your ears ringing, holding your best friend's corpse in one hand and a trigger in the other. You can't teach that. You can only survive it. Sometimes I think about the Zephyrians, not with guilt, with curiosity. Did they know? Did they see it coming? That one planet they thought would fall like all the others would be the one that lit the match and burned their entire legacy to ash? Maybe not. Maybe they were too arrogant to see it. Maybe they were just too tired. Just like us now. There's a grave next to Reyes's now, unmarked, fresh. I buried a rifle there last week. No name, no war, just dirt, and a choice. I still wake up sometimes with my hands around my own throat. Still dream of the tower. Still see Boone walking away into the trees, muttering about needing to be alone with the blood. But those dreams don't scare me anymore, because I earned them. Every scar, every scream, every memory, earned. Earth isn't safe. It never will be. But it's ours now. Scarred, burnt, bitter, but alive. And when the next empire comes looking, they'll find us waiting. Not with open arms, but with clenched fists. Because we remember. Because we refuse to forget. Because once upon a time, They sent their fleet to Earth, after 164 victories. And not a single ship survived.